we are finally taking a look at one of the new SH Monsterarts figures. This has been released for some time in the US. It's just starting to come in Canada. Let's dive into this review by first taking a look at the shipping box it came in. Yes, I got this directly in the shipping box. Very, very nice. So there's obviously nothing too interesting to look at the moment. So let's just crack the shipping box open and show you the actual packaging, shall we? All right. Let's look at this thing, shall we? I will say this box is a little longer than the Kong box. We have Skar King. We have the beautiful red font. I was really impressed with the purple font they did with the Kong box. Then we have some of the logos down here, other logos down here with the sticker, the authenticity sticker. Then we have the top, then we have the bottom, then we have this side, and then we have this side. And finally, here's the back. So one thing I did notice, the OG Godzilla and Kong had like a window where you can look in and see the figures. They kind of stopped doing that. Instead, you have a fully covered back here. We have some Japanese and Chinese writings down here as well. If you know how to read them, you may pause the video. Some glams of Skar King, whipping the whip, doing all that. We've seen all the photos, and of course, in case you forgot, it's here to remind you that the B.E.A.S.T glove attachment is included in this set. So, why don't we open this now and take a look at Skar King? What did I tell you? It is indeed the whip. The whip made up most of the length of the box, as you can see. If you want to read this, do pause the video. And here's the front. Again, you can pause the video at any point to look at that. I've got some, well, I guess interesting opinions about this. I don't know what to think about this. I don't know, like, I can't put my tongue on it. Something feels off about this. I think it could be the colors, and I think it could be the overall look. I have seen people complain about this guy looking very lanky and blah blah blah. Like, he is lanky, that is his build. That was their intention of designing him. Kong is all about muscle, Skar King is all about agility, hence his lankiness. The first thing I did after opening this was I went over and grabbed my Playmates Skar King. The colors are very different. The tone of his red is lighter than this, but it hasn't reached the level Playmates has. At first, I thought Playmates kind of screwed up the scaling. I was like, oh, it looks like Kong could beat up Skar King. Skar King was supposed to be bigger than Kong. Well, he actually was that height in the movie. Now that I look at the SH Monsterarts figure here, I feel like the Playmates Skar King is a little bit more in scale with the SH Monsterarts. Okay, actually no, maybe not. I take that back. He's like almost up to par with Kong in terms of the height. He's like slightly shorter than Kong. This was the Skar King I was expecting last year when I was reviewing the toys, having not seen the movie yet. This is what I thought Skar King would be. Maybe the scaling is a little bit off here. It's not terrible. I've wanted a high quality Skar King figure for a while now. I don't want to just be stuck with the Playmates one, so this was the best option I got until Hiya Toys releases their Skar King. Like, he definitely should have been smaller than Kong, that's for sure. Let's pitch him next to Godzilla. Yeah, he's taller than Godzilla. This ain't adding up. This is not adding up. This actually looks like Skar King can actually go toe-to-toe with Godzilla, which obviously was absolutely not the case in the movie. It really looks like Kong is the underdog when you look at these two. Don't put Shimo in the picture yet. Just look at this. This is somewhat believable. I think there's something a little off with the scaling here. Normally, SH Monsterarts is very on par with their scaling. I guess this is the first time or one of the few times that they've really messed up. One thing SH Monsterarts has really nailed from all their figures throughout their entire line is articulation. Articulation articulation is always on par because there's so many different joints on all the figures. Even with Ghidorah, there is plenty of space to give him lots of articulation, and they sure as hell gave him a lot of articulation. So the first thing, we have waist articulation here. Right at the bottom of his waist. His ass cheeks kind of sticking out a little too much for my liking. We have a little articulation up this upper waist. It's a little bit stiff, but you know, just warm up with it a little bit and it'll probably be fine. Another point of articulation here. And then we have his head articulation. This is where I feel like the articulation's a little off. His arm articulation, lots of that as well. Look at that. This literally looks like he's giving a speech to his fellow apes. Good elbow articulation. You have the wrist articulation here as well. And you have the hand itself. There's 2 points here. So because this is on a ball socket and then this is on a ball socket, you have, yeah, multiple points of articulation. So lots of flexibility there. Look at that. Great for posability. And if you want him to be crawling on his fours like this, it's very possible. Just lean it forward a little bit. And then on his legs, you have some articulation in the thigh, in the knee, even in the feet. There's like a folding bit here, you can see. Ball socket here as well, so there's articulation there, and then there's articulation on his ankles. Despite it being super stiff, it is there, it is possible. The articulation will never ever disappoint me. Every time, Bandai is always on point with articulation when it comes to SH Monsterarts, so I don't need to worry about that. I'm kind of curious to why they chose this goji berry dark tone to his fur, his overall color. There's something off about it. Is this actually his color in the movie? When he was up on the surface in Rio and the sun is shining on him, you can see his full color. It's a lot brighter than what SH Monsterarts has done here. His fur, it should be a lighter red color. So there's just something a little off about this in my opinion. Granted, there is some good contrast. I mean, if you look at some of the coloring on his body, you have some like silver skin going on here that's like contrasting with the red. He's not naturally red. He just painted himself red so he can show his dominance to the other apes that he is the boss around here. That is all painting, tattooing. So the fur is not natural color. So Bandai actually captured that pretty well by having some of the red fading out near his shoulders and the other bits, and underneath his arm here as well, some of the bits here. So it kind of shows that, you know, some of the paint might be starting to wear off him. You know, the tattoos on his face is also done pretty well. If you look at his forehead, you can kind of see just a smidget. Looks like a handprint on it. It's not like neatly colored on his head. That's intentional. I am pretty sure that's intentional. I mean, most of the red can be shown on his back when you look at it. And it's not that it's a bad thing. It's just, I don't think it's that movie accurate. Like, it's not accurate. That's the main issue here. It's not accurate. If you don't look at the accuracy, then yeah, it's actually not a terrible figure. I'm glad that this figure exists. However, I honestly think it could have been so much better. Displaying this will be a little bit challenging because, like Kong, I don't think he's very sturdy. Like, look, he's already like wanting to tip over. And he has short, lanky legs. Like, there's not enough foundation to hold this guy up. Now, the big thing about Skar King is obviously his whip. It doesn't really feel like that. It actually feels like decent material. A decent hard plastic that's not rubbery, but it's also not cheap plastic where if you bend it too intensively, it's just gonna snap. Now, I wouldn't recommend you trying it out, but upon first touch, it feels solid. It feels like a hard plastic. Now, also is very important that it's not super hard. It needs to be flexible. It is a whip after all. And as you can see, as I'm like slowly bending this, it maintains its shape. It's kind of like starting to fold back out though. There is a little bit of resistance to it, but again, it's just because it's fresh out of the factory. You just gotta fiddle this quite a bit, and I think it should not be an issue in the end. If you compare this to, let's say, the Playmates whip, obviously the Playmates one is so much cheaper, it's so much shorter, there's zero details on it, it's just one color scheme. Very flimsy, very rubbery. Obviously it's a cheap children's toy in this case, but because this has a $150 price tag attached to it, you would expect a higher end quality for this, and they do deliver with that higher end quality. Taking a look at the handle here, this is like the jaw of another Titan. That's a very good attention to detail. You can see the contrast of the darker I want to say skin color on this side, but then if you turn around, you can see it's a little bit lighter on the outside bit here. So it really shows that this is a spine of a Titan, right? So it's technically bones. And I think it would be nice if it was a little bit more paler, a little bit more on the whiter side. But this sand slash skin color tone I think is perfectly fine. Now we look at the tip here. This is the crystal. Of course, he uses this to control Shimo. I would assume this piece is very fragile because it was wrapped in plastic when you first unboxed this. Playmates actually cheaped out because Playmates' whip Playmates did not include a crystal for their whip. In fact, that jaw of that Titan is at the end because the figure cannot grip this. He can only grip the other end. So it's reverse for the Playmates whip. And this is lore accurate. This whip looks a lot more like the whip from the movie. I would give it a solid 9 out of 10. Like, this is actually a very decent quality whip. What we have right now are his open hands. So in this case, Skar King actually has an interesting headpiece. His headpiece comes in 2 pieces, as you can see from the instruction sheet. So this thing has its own point of articulation. That is pretty funny. Lenny face, as I like to call it. No expression. Let's get this boring face out. If I can pull it out like that. Oh, just pull it out like that. Okay. Okay. And then we take the back of his head. I don't even know what to call it. Now we just gotta attach that back on the main body. But first, actually, let me show you this roaring face. I definitely much prefer this roaring face over his neutral face. It's a little off, I will say. It looks a little awkward in my opinion. That being said, let's put this back on now. It still looks a little off. Let's replace the hands. We gotta replace it with one of these pairs. So let's quickly show you these pairs actually. The closed hands here, the closed fists. There's actually a good attention to detail when you see the contrast of the gunmetal gray and then it kind of starts fading into the red. Gripping, climbing fists, I guess is when he's like hanging on to something. It's very similar to Kong, obviously. He will be holding the whip with these hands. So let's pull these hands. Of course, these are the open hands, so we can put these away. This one on now. There we are. Very, very nice. How do we do this? Well, that's pretty easy. This is the basic idea of what you'll get. The whip is heavy. It keeps detaching the hand off sometimes. But as you can evidently see, it does carry a lot of weight. And it can sometimes drag the arms down quite a bit. The whip is great. The figure itself, that's a different story. Now, in the movie, we also see him wrap the whip around himself. That's how he carries it without holding it. I think it's possible. You can probably do that with this whip. However, it's gonna require some serious bending, and there's no like way to actually attach the whip to keep it wrapped up. Unlike the Playmates one does. You can actually attach it together to keep it wrapped around it, but you can't do that with this whip here. I think the whip definitely makes up with the quality of the design of this figure as a whole. Now, he does also hold Kong's axe at one point in the movie. He steals it from him. The handle for the axe might be too thin. It actually might not be able to hold in his open hand here. It'll probably just fall out. This guy's not willing to stand up on his own, as you can see. It's actually getting a little frustrating. So, before I give my final verdict, obviously, that's not all this figure has to offer. We also have the Beast glove hand. So let's pivot to Kong for a second and put the Beast glove on him. I've got my Kong here. Obviously, I reviewed this earlier, so I can do this right now with the attachment. So go check out that review if you haven't already. But I am sure this will work with any of the older Kongs you may have. I have the previous Kongs as well, but if you took the 2021 Kongs and the special edition one, you can probably fit this Beast glove on them. It works just fine. If you really don't want to spend the extra buck to buy this Kong, I don't blame you. However, I will recommend this Kong because the colors on this Kong, as I showed you in my review for this, is a little different from the previous Kongs. And so, the Beast glove arm here, the color of course matches this Kong, guaranteed, but it might be a little off for some of the older Kongs. If that really bothers you, then yeah, you're probably gonna have to buy this Kong. If you don't care, well, go for it. Use your old Kongs. Like I said, it works just as fine. So, it's up to your discretion. But we also have optional additional hands if you want to change the position of his hands on the Beast Glove itself. I would like to say right off the get-go, this looks and feels very high quality. I am very used to the Playmates Kong at this point, and the Beast Glove is often just another layer of plastic slapped onto the arm. The plastic feels glossy, it's obviously a lot cheaper, so that makes sense. But now that we have a higher end quality Kong figure here, and I'm looking at this Beast Glove, and it really does feel higher quality. Like, you look at the yellow is really sharp. It pokes at you. So the Beast Glove is done pretty well. However, you will notice all the printings. There used to be numbers and letters on the Beast Glove as markings. None of that exists on this Beast Glove. It's just simple, plain yellow, which I'm not opposed to. I honestly don't mind. If this is gonna be the reason why many people are gonna buy the Skar King, then I think that wasn't really effective on Bandai's part. This should have been included in the Kong, honestly. Just saying. But we do have the alternate hands. Looks really nice. Looks like he's giving a high five. Looks like he's holding on to something. I won't be using this one, but you know, this does exist. This one, if you want him to hold the battle axe with the Beast Glove arm, you're going to need to use this. I won't because I have the axe equipped on his other arm, but if you want him to hold the axe with the Beast Glove arm, this is the one to go, the gripping arm. They do include this tool as well. So this tool, they took the color scheme of Skar King and just slapped it on this tool thing. If you ever own a big Lego set, if you ever bought one of those big Lego sets and they have these brick separators, these orange and blue things, tools, they're called brick separators, and the whole objective of those is places where some Lego pieces might be really hard to remove with your hands, you use that tool to help you remove those pieces. It's the same concept here, because as you saw when I was swapping the heads for Skar King, there are these super tiny ball sockets, sometimes too small for your hands to touch, for your fingers to touch. So that's what this tool is there. It's like a screwdriver, it's like a pincer. Do not throw this away. This is not like a random piece of plastic. This is important. First order of business, we gotta rip off his arm here. There we go. The ball socket is stuck on here, so that's what this tool is gonna be used for. We need to get this ball socket out. Let me just pry it out. Oh, okay. Kind of just flew out. So this can be put away now in somewhere else. We're gonna transfer this ball socket onto here. This literally just goes right through it. Oh, I get it. Put it on the surface, on the table, and then you just take this. Ah, I see. Makes sense. Okay. Ball socket's on the arm now. We can put away the tool. Final step is to reattach this now. There we go. As I mentioned earlier, you have the option of attaching the axe onto the Beast Glove arm. You just need this hand to do so. So just swap that out, and there you go. You can have this Beast Glove arm hold the battle axe, but I like to see both weapons stand out on their own, so gonna have them separate like this. I'm happy with it like this. Now, this really makes this Kong worth buying. I think if I had the roaring face on, it would be a lot better. It would make him look a lot more badass, but wait for the Sheen review, because that will have his metal tooth face, and then the Suku and Mothra one will have his metal tooth face roaring. So that will be like the last thing to complete the Kong. Articulating the Beast Glove arm is actually a little bit more limited. You can only pretty much articulate the wrists and his armpit. That's pretty much it. So the levels of articulation is a little bit limited. You can move his elbow a little bit, but as you can see, it's very subtle. You can only move it so far. It's so limited, but that's okay because I think the Beast Glove itself already limits the articulation. It's the same issue with the Playmates one, so I'm not surprised it's the same here with SH Monsterarts, but this looks good. This is the Kong that I recognize from the movie. The main reason of getting this Beast Glove is obviously going back to this, the Skar King. Yeah, I have issues with this Skar King. It's not the worst figure, but it's 100% not the best figure. Look at this footing next to Kong. To reiterate my point earlier, I feel like I'm writing a paper here, goodness. Back to my thesis. Skar King is supposed to be smaller than Kong. He is lankier than Kong. The only reason he was able to beat Kong was because of his agility, his army, and Shimo. This looks like Skar King is a credible threat himself, and Kong would struggle against him. This doesn't look like it, guys. Like, I hate to say it, but this is not it. This is not the Skar King I was expecting when I bought this figure. Yes, it's Skar King, period. I got the character in SH Monsterarts form. That's great. However, I can kind of understand now some of the critiques of this Skar King. Number one, it cannot stand up on its own. I'm literally holding his hands, just so he can stand up right now. While as Kong is just standing there by himself, perfectly fine, no issues. And I think due to the body build of Skar King, he has a lot of weight on his shoulders areas here, and his lanky legs just can't support it. The Beast Glove attachment on Kong, fantastic. No complaints for me. I am absolutely satisfied. Ultimately, the main thing in this video is all about the Skar King here. And I hate to say it, this might be the worst SH Monsterarts figure I've ever gotten. I had such high hopes with this figure. When I first saw the glams, I was like, oh my god, I can't wait to get this. It could have been so much better. Like, the Playmates Skar King wasn't movie accurate either, but it's a cheap kid's toy. You can kind of get away with that reasoning. SH Monsterarts is high quality, right? This costed me 150 Canadian dollars. So of course I'm gonna expect quality with that price tag. And I just feel like I didn't get it. This was a very hit or miss figure, and unfortunately it definitely missed. Out of 10, I'm gonna have to give Skar King here, unfortunately, a 5 out of 10. The whip makes up for a lot of the disappointment I got out of this figure. I am excited for Shimo though, and I hope Shimo won't disappoint. I do have to agree with a lot of the critics on this Skar King. I mean, it's great we have a higher end Skar King figure. We don't have to rely on the Playmates toys all the time now. It just could have been so much better. So of course, if you wanted to see my full review on the Kong, check that out. Link in description and screen and card. So if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more. And I guess the next time I'll do this will be when I get the SH Monsterarts Shimo. Subscribe, turn the bell on, and we'll see you in the next video.